Timber decks generally last, if you have a softwood deck, you'd normally get a good 20 to 25 years out of that. Hardwood decks generally last a lot longer than that. It can be 30 to 40 years. It is very much down to how it's been constructed and the actual timber that you're using. Hardwoods are always, as it says, hard, a lot harder surface. They're far more durable. They're not relying on any chemical treatment to preserve, which you would have with a softwood. So hardwoods generally give you a far longer lifespan. Decks need to be maintained very much as you would do for patios. You can jet wash the deck, providing you don't have the nozzle any closer than sort of 6 to 8 inches from the surface of the deck. And then you can jet wash it off, but we would always recommend you use a solution like PrepDeck, which you spray on with in a 5 litre water sprayer. You spray down the deck, leave it for 10 minutes, and then you can get the jet wash, and jet washing that removes all the dirt and the muck off the boards. And then you can either leave it as it is, or you can, once it's dry, you can then re-oil the timber. If it's a hardwood, you can re-oil it. The same would apply with softwood, but have to bear in mind softwoods will get dirtier quicker because it's a more open grain timber. But the same principle applies. You need to clean it with a proprietary cleaner and then jet wash it all off. And it's your choice as to whether you oil that board or you just leave it to age to a silvery grey colour. Some people put stains on. We wouldn't recommend doing that because it tends to be a surface treatment, and if you're dragging chairs around and moving things around, you can end up chipping it and it can just end up looking a mess, and you're just giving yourself more maintenance. Whereas with an oil soaks into the surface and protects the surface of the timber. You don't see it, you're not creating brush marks. You can apply it with a mop or a sponge. It's very simple to do. You only need one coat if you use a decent oil, say something like a Mesner's UV Plus, then you can just apply one decent coat. You wipe off the surface, the residue, so you don't let it puddle or anything, otherwise it will go tacky, and that's it. It's one coat and it's done. Some people do their decks twice a year, others leave it until the spring and then give it a coat ready for the following year. Slippery deck boards is all down to you keeping the deck clean. It has nothing to do with the material. You can slip just as easily on slabs, concrete slabs, or any other material. It's all down to the dirt that accumulates on the surface. So as long as you keep that surface clean, relatively clean, you don't let leaves and debris rot down onto the deck, then you're not going to have slippery issues at all. Using a pressure washer is perfectly fine as long as you don't hold it too close. If you use a pressure washer on the surface and you hold it too close, you can damage the surface of the timber and sort of raise the grain on it. So as long as you're sensible and you keep it a sensible distance away, we would always say something like sort of about 8 inches or so on a spray setting, then that is perfectly fine. But what removes the dirt is the cleaner that you applied to it before. Otherwise you're expecting the jet wash to do a lot more work in terms of removing the dirt if you don't use a cleaner first. In terms of ongoing maintenance and aftercare between a timber deck and a composite deck, the same rules apply in terms of using a jet wash. You need to be fairly careful with it, but what you can't do is use a chemical cleaner on a composite deck. What you'd have to use is soap and water, or a household detergent in a bowl of soapy water effectively. You would have to brush that on the surface, brush off the muck, and then you would hose it off. So in terms of labour, it's fairly easily defined. Your labour is going to be slightly more in terms of putting a brush of soapy water over there and brushing it off, all the dirt off, and then jet washing it. Whereas if you're using a sprayer with a cleaner in it, all you're doing is walking down the deck boards and spraying it, spraying the cleaner on, and then leaving it for 10 minutes and then jet washing it off. So it's less arduous using a cleaner than it is messing around with bowls of soapy water and a stiff brush.